So just kind of our general our announcements. Bathrooms are outside the door to your left. Please use as you need. Sign the attendance sheet, and if you haven't, someone from staff, please grab it off the table. Make sure folks are signing it. We are in a webinar, so all the lines are muted. If you want to address us, you'll need to press *2 to unmute your line, and again, *2 to mute your line. We encourage you to keep your lines muted because we sometimes can hear the background noise. Public comment or questions will be accepted by typing it into the webinar, as well as unmuting your phone and just talking. If on the conference call only, please send your name, title, and company and contact information to Paula Loving. Her email is ploving@mt.gov. If you're giving public comments, please state your name and organization and spell your name. We do have to use the microphones for all communications because that is our official record. This includes public comment as well as board discussion, motion, seconds to the motions, and votes, please.
Clarification, everybody needs to sign in again today, correct? On the sign-in sheet?
Yes, please sign in again today. Even though you might have signed in yesterday, we need to know who's here this morning. And with that, we're going to do introductions again, starting with Eric.
Eric Schindler, board member from Helena.
Bob Gochu, board member, Ronan.
Greg Gould, council from Helena.
Pat Melby, board member from Helena.
Bruce Brenzel, executive director to the board.
Amber Parrish, board member, Billings.
Jeanette McKee, board member, Hamilton.
Johnny McCluskey, board member, Billings.
We'll ask the people attending here today to introduce themselves again, although you may have yesterday.
Tyler Currents, Housing Solutions. Alex Burkhalter, Housing Solutions. Tyson O'Connell, Wishcamper Development Partners.
Andrew Shinania, AC Solutions.
Diane Hunt, Syringa Housing.
Ryan Hackett, Syringa Housing.
Mary Palkovich, Montana Housing.
Ginger Fan Cook, Montana Housing.
Cheryl Cohen, Montana Housing.
June Beartusk with American Covenant Senior Housing Foundation.
Heather Grenier, HRDC. Tracy Minuet, HRDC.
Heather McMillan, Homeward. Andrea Davis, Homeward.
Taylor Hunt, Syringa Housing.
Larry Phillips, NeighborWorks, Montana.
Jim Morton with the Human Resource Council serving Missoula, Mineral, and Ravalli County.
Bob Robinson with the Human Resource Council serving Mineral, Missoula, and Ravalli County.
Diana Culver-Vanek, Montana Housing.
Leslie Torgerson, Montana Housing.
Melanie Leon, Piper Jaffrey.
Kelly Gurlia, Montana Housing.
Bear, Montana Housing.
Paula Loving, Montana Housing.
Thank you. With those people.
Did Ryan and Kelly and Penny, and we left them out yesterday, I think.
Todd Jackson, Montana Housing.
Penny Cope, Montana Housing.
Ryan Colfer, Montana Housing.
Thank you. Didn't mean to omit anyone. So with those people on the webinar, please identify themselves, *2 to unmute your phone.
This is Liz Mogstad with Rocky Mountain Development Council in Helena.
Hi, this is Lori Davidson, Missoula Housing Authority.
Katia French, District 4 HRDC.
Jennifer Wheeler, Glacier Bank.
Carissa Dry, Homeward.
That appears to be all on the webinar. Yes, Penny.
Excuse me, Pat, just for your information, I would add that I see Chad Householder on the, on the webinar anyway, from Summit Housing, and Vicky Bauer as well, just for information for the meeting.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on with the, we'll move on back to the multifamily program. Mary, do you have anything for us before we move on into the selection process?
I have an update for you. First thing is that we talked about, or I mentioned yesterday, House Bill 16 passed. Bruce and I and some other people will be working on administrative rules for that. Hopefully those will be through the process before the money is available July 1st. You have a dashboard that gives you information, projects that are underway. I wanted to bring to your attention at Freedom's Path, they had finished 7 units, and the Section 8 side went out to do HQS. All 7 of those units failed the inspection. Freedom's Path, the rehab. And I don't know if they have gone to re-inspect.
So they have re-inspected it, and Leslie, if correct me, but I think.
Yes, we re-inspected yesterday and 5 of the 7 passed.
So they're getting there at least.
Yeah,
okay.
We're getting there.
Is it fair to ask you to characterize what the points were that they did not pass on?
Sure, there were some, there was a crack in the ceiling that's been repaired. There were cracks in some window panes in the basement. There were some exposed wire, several windows. Those are the big things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The windows wouldn't open for egress
Right.
in case of emergency.
Thanks, Mary.
And then you have a list of the non-compliance. We haven't been very many places so far. They've been busy, but you'll notice that even though there are several issues at the Blackfeet, they are less than they were the last time around. There are, the rest of them are, you know, there's a few others on there, but there aren't a whole lot of issues on anything. There are some windows at Ouellette in the old building. The Meadows, which are finishing up their rehab, there's a whole bunch of cracks in the sidewalk. And you'll notice at the bottom, I thought you guys might want to know that there are several properties that have been inspected where there were no findings. So that does happen.
Thank you. Are there any board questions or comments on the multifamily program update? Are there any public comments or questions regarding the multifamily program update? With that, we'll move into the 2019 Housing Credit LOI selection. And I guess the first thing we have under that is there any public comment or questions regarding any project that's been discussed here yesterday? Are there any comments or questions from the board regarding of any developer or staff member regarding any project?
Yeah, this is Eric. I'd just like to hear from Mary again about the combined 9%, 4% project that brought in down in the Bitterroot Valley. Why that 4% project couldn't stand on its own, and what the benefits are of combining those credits, and just to have a little better understanding for the board, because it's a pretty unique situation they're proposing.
When a 9% deal is done, the credits are calculated at 9% of the eligible basis. So if you had a $5 million deal, you would have $4,500,000 in credits. If you have a 4% deal, the rate right now is 3.25. So on that $5 million, you only have $1,625,000 in credits. So the first part of that is that it's really hard to find an investor for that small amount of credits, for the $1,625,000. And then the other part of it is when those 4% credits come from a tax-exempt bond deal or a tax-exempt loan, which we've done both, the bond has to fund at least 50%. There has to be 50% debt on that project. So that's a lot of debt to cover for a project that is smaller. Some of the financial benefits of putting together the projects in a 4 and 9 are that your syndication costs are probably going to be spread across the property. They'll probably be the same for both as they would be for the 9% on its own. You're spreading the fixed costs over more units. The legal fees, a lot of the soft costs are spread over both projects. You have some benefits in if you can get the per unit cost is going to be spread over more units. The allocation cost, you can maximize the amount of credits for not the allocation cost, but sometimes you're going to be able to get more for the credits because you have more dollars to interest an investor. Is Rusty here? I did call Steve Demick, who works on a lot of these deals, last night and talked to him. These are some of the things that he said. Yeah, I think that's most of it.
Thank you, Mary. Any other questions or of staff?
I just have a comment. From looking at these deals and running the numbers on them, I think, although they're separate legal transactions and they have to be for federal tax rules, I think also what they can do is the 9% of the deal can pay a few more of the fees and costs, that they don't have to burden the 4% deal with. So you can kind of see that, and the benefit when you look at the combined numbers for the 4.9 is you can see that the cost per unit and cost per square foot when you blend them together becomes a lot more reasonable than it might be just when you look at the 9 itself. So that also happens, and if you can see that if we had all of the numbers and details that we would for a full application, so that's something to look for too.
Are there any other questions from the board before we go into executive session? Okay, we're going to go into executive session. This will be a board discussion on each member's top 8 priorities. We're going to start on the right-hand side with Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I just want to say how difficult this decision is, just not for me, but all of us sitting here, because all of these projects are so deserving. And we, unfortunately, as we hear often, we've heard members from the board and the public talk about, we just don't have enough resources for the need that's out there. So these are really difficult decisions. And interestingly, my horoscope today said it's a wonderful day to study something that requires mental focus. And if you look at the papers that we deal and the data that we deal with is an incredible amount, and it requires tremendous mental focus to get through all this. In fact, this is my worksheet, if anybody wants to see it, of looking at all of these projects. So I take this very seriously as I looked at how to allocate these credits, or what my recommendations would be. I considered all the criteria outlined in the agenda, I started first looking at the rehab projects. There were a number of rehab projects in the cases where there's a risk of losing that inventory. If they're not rehabbed, then this can be very difficult for those communities. And a couple of them were also rural when we looked at the rural allocations. And the rehabs that I support are Hardin Senior Housing, Absaroka, the Homestead Lodge, and Helena Valley View Apartments. The interesting thing to me about the Helena proposal was that it of all the proposals had the most needy residents, where almost all of the credits went to 50% of AMI.
Eric?
Yes.
Clarification.
Oh, I'm sorry. I want Helena Skyview. Is that?
Or Helena, Fire Tower.
Fire Tower. Thank you. I'm sorry. Helena Fire Tower. Pardon me. The Helena Fire Tower project. When I looked at almost all of those credits, not very many. I think there were only 6 units of the 44 that went to 60% of AMI. The rest were all 50% and 40%, and that addressed the biggest need of all the projects. So I selected the Helena Valley View Apartments. For a new construction, when looking at all the criteria, these are my selections.
Eric,
yes.
You said, I think you meant, it said Skyview or Valley View?
Fire Tower.
You, in your last, in your wrap up on rehab, you said.
Oh, did I say Skyview?
Not Skyview, but Valley View or something like.
Oh, I changed it.
Well, yeah, but in his when he was recapping, he.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
I just wanted to clarify.
I can't keep my Helena project straight. I apologize for that. There's only a little bit of data here. For the new constructions, I looked. These were the selections that I ranked. Butte, Paxton Place. It was submitted again. There's a market need, and the construction costs were very reasonable. Dillon, the Dillon project, based on market need and cost too, I thought. And I was surprised by the huge need in the Dillon market for housing, looking at the numbers. Missoula Skyview's back again, based on market need and cost. Kalispell project on Creekside Commons, that's back again and again based on market need and cost. I think I would like to look at that again. And lastly, the Bozeman Timber Ridge 9%, 4% project, which is very creative. I'd like to see that move forward. I think this could open up some other avenues for how to creatively use 9%, 4% projects in the state of Montana, particularly in smaller communities, where we can marry up in separate communities somehow projects to take the benefit of this 9%, 4% mix. And I think those are 8. Do I have up there? Okay. Thank you. And I'll try next time to get my Helena projects together.
Thank you, Eric. Sheila.
Want to thank the developers for bringing these forward and tell you that this day and the next round is the hardest days that we have as commissioners. I wish we could fund everything. They're all good projects. My criteria overall were creativity, bang for the buck, and need. I looked at all of the factors, but those were the 3 tiebreakers for me. So my first selection would be Hardin. I liked it because I think that Bighorn County is underserved when I look at the analysis of tax credit units per 1,000 people, that they are in the low range there. Hardin is 40% Native American, so I know that there will be a number of Native American families served by this project, and as it happens so often in border cities. Plus, they're adding 3 additional units, and so I always like to have somehow, I love preservation because it keeps the units, but I always worry we need to create the next unit and the next unit. So that would be my first one. The second one is Stevensville Nicole Court, on the basis of their ability to serve domestic violence, victims of domestic violence. They've got donated land. They brought other funds in, and they have the highest deferred developer fee. So they're basically putting their own money where their mouth is here as well. Third is, moving down to Butte, Paxson Place. There is significant need there. Silverborough County, again, tends to be on the underserved side of the last 10 years of tax credits. And they have a very low tax credit per unit, so bang for buck again there. So Paxson Place would be my next one. Next would be Laurel, Pullman Apartments. Again, this is an underserved county. Haven't had Yellowstone, for its largest population in the state, has proportionately been underserved. It's the low end of the tax credits per unit as well, so I like the bang for the buck there. Next is Fire Tower in Helena, and this I liked because, again, it was creative. It has the greatest need, so the biggest number under the market study was in Helena, 295 families or individuals waiting for these units. A low cost per unit. I liked it. It converted some existing affordable but not income restricted into, so it brought new units. They're existing units, but they're not income restricted, so I like that one. And so Fire Tower was the next one I had. Then I moved to Dillon. Again, one of the least served counties is Beaverhead County. Very reasonable costs. Skyview in Missoula, again, very high need. And they're about midway, a little bit high on the served per number of tax credit homes per 1,000 population, but I like that one because of their costs were very reasonable as well. And then my last one would be Bozeman Timber Ridge. I like 9 and 4. We get more bang for our buck. I'm always looking to stretch the tax credits further. And it brings in the 4%. We know that those apartments in Ravalli County are going to be requesting tax credits at some point. Great to keep them in the 4% column. I think that's it.
Thank you, Sheila. Bob?
Thank you. And thank you, everybody, for presentations yesterday. And I got up early this morning, and I thought I'm going to be thinking a lot better. I wasn't, but I come up with really 9, but I'm going to give you the 8 that are, and these are rated based on, I took 5 factors that I thought were the most important. Because I could assign numbers to them, and then I came up with a final tally. So the first is geographic distribution. Then they had to have an affordability factor of not over a 50% average. And so there were some that were in and some that were out based on that. Then I figured the tax credits per square foot, the total construction cost, and the soft costs, and I assigned points. The number 1 rated project that I came up with was Homestead Lodge in Absaroka. The number 2 project, Creekside Commons in Kalispell. The next project, Paxson Place in Butte. The next project is Pullman Apartments in Laurel. The next is Timber Ridge in Bozeman. The next is Hardin Senior Housing. The next is Fire Tower Apartments in Helena. And my last one was the toughest. I rehashed it several times, and I came up with Nicole Court because of a significant amount of capital at risk on that was a deciding factor. They're right, like Sheila said, right in the middle of the geo distribution, so that's my.
Thank you, Bob. Amber, we'll move to you.
Well, you can see why this isn't an exact science and why it's so difficult. We all take in all the factors that are laid before us, but there are a few things that ring true to each of us as to what's important as far as maybe it's geographical distribution, underserved areas, bang for the buck. So again, like every other board member, I took everything into consideration, but there are a few things that stick out to me. One of my major concerns is losing units. I know, Sheila, I'm not supposed to use units. Losing homes that could be rehabbed, and if we don't rehab them now, they're going to go offline altogether, and then we're starting from scratch. And there's a few, in particular, rehab projects that I feel really need to be addressed now. One of those being Hardin, the other one being Absaroka. So that would be Homestead Lodge and Hardin Senior Living, or Hardin Senior Housing. I also feel, even though the per unit cost for Bozeman for the Boulevard Apartments is at our very upper end, I do feel that we're in danger of losing units, homes, apartments in a place that can't afford to lose any. So I would put forward a vote for Boulevard Apartments. And let's see, moving on to rehab also, sorry, Fire Tower Apartments in Helena. I think, is that 4? Did I do 4? 3, 4. Yes, I'll just stop there. Okay. So then moving on to new construction, Ventura Villas in Hamilton. I feel that there is a great need in that area in Ravalli County, and I think the family project, even though the costs are high, I do think that some family housing in that area is much needed. My next one would be Dillon, very underserved, and obviously it's one of those that when you're listening to the presentation and you realize how dire it is there, that there's not a lot of space to put homes, and I think this is just kind of the perfect opportunity. So Dillon would get my vote. Creekside Commons in Kalispell, and then Bozeman Timber Ridge. Okay.
Thank you, Amber. Jeanette.
Again, thanking every single one of you. This is an arduous, difficult process for you, well before it's that for us. You know, we all look at each other as we exited and just go, oh my Lord, this is, it's really hard. Not enough money, Sheila's right, you all know that. But I appreciate every single one of you. Your presentations were excellent. They were really good. You did a nice job. And mine are in really absolutely no order, particular order, just because I kept jumping back and forth. So, but my 8 are for the reasons that we're charged with, and I wrote this down because we're charged with best meeting the most pressing housing needs of low-income people within the state of Montana. And so that means to me a lot of things, numbers, even more so than maybe sometimes geographical distance, though I do keep that into my mind. So again, in no particular order, but the first one I will mention is Absaroka, Homestead Lodge. It can get off the ground, get going real fast, and the work can be done with the tenants in place. I liked that a lot. Square footage cost was very reasonable. Appreciate that. Number 2, Helena, Fire Tower Apartments. Again, we have 44 units, lowest cost square footage of all 9% projects. Number 3, Dillon, Pioneer Meadows. They haven't had a tax credit since 2003, and they have a potential of losing the property if they're not selected this year. Square footage costs a little higher, but they're off the interstate, so I understand. Number 4, the 9%, 4% project. It is, 82 things that will be affected. I think the combined square foot costs, $118, impressive. Lots of leverage both ways. Number 5, Laurel, Pullman Apartments, 36 new, $185 a square foot. Controlling costs across the board. Nice job. I get the ability of how to do that. Number 6, Kalispell, Creekside Commons. It's its 3rd request. It's a good project. Kalispell is growing rapidly. Number 7, I'm putting forth Ventura Hills in Hamilton. One could say, I live in Hamilton, and I could be self-serving, and that could be some of the comments that some may think. But because I live in Hamilton, I really know about Hamilton. And what I really know, since living there since '72, and being involved in this community, is how much a need there is. GlaxoSmithKline, which was alluded to yesterday, is the pharmaceutical company which is already in Hamilton. They have announced a $100 million expansion in Hamilton that will be done in 2022. So there's a very little time, and that will increase not only the worker population and the force, but the population that work in that area as well. It will be immense. And I will let you know, and I asked if I should disclose this, but I am a member of the Ravalli County Head Start Board. John Fields testified yesterday, but again, they do not benefit. We need to find a place for those kids. So I am putting it out, and I would say to Becky, who is listening, I know, your square footage cost is a little high. Should you make it to the final round? I think I hope you'll look at that. That's my comment there. And number 8, the last one is Butte, Paxton Place. You get 36 new units in in a place that hasn't been served a lot.
Thank you, Jeanette. Johnny.
Well, I'll echo the same thing. Thank you all for all of your hard work and diligence in trying to put these things together and try to impact the affordable housing needs for our state. I was not an early riser to think on this. I stayed up very late, too late. I was up till about 1 o'clock this morning, poring over the data, just trying to figure out how in the hell am I going to decide this? Because like it's been said, your projects are all deserving. We don't have enough money. And I'll echo Sheila's point. We need to get involved. We need to make something happen so that we don't have to leave people out. All of these acquisition rehab projects that are potentially on the line for losing homes, that should be unacceptable to us as a state. And it's unfortunate that we have to make a decision like this where we may leave somebody out, and somebody may lose their home. So I don't have any particular order. As well as all the data, you've seen the sheet. Eric, thank you for showing them what that looks like for us. Some of the things that I think about that really kind of pop into my mind is geographic distribution. And how frequent are the awards? Those are a couple of things I do look at. Some percentage of population to housing tax credit percentages. What is the impact of the number of units compared to the need? And so those are some of the things that have jumped out to me, as well as total construction costs. So in no particular order, here's what I have. I have the Nicole Court, Stevensville. I have Dillon, Pioneer Meadows, Laurel, Pullman Apartments, Bozeman Timber Ridge, the Hardin Senior Housing, the Missoula Skyview, Helena Valley View. Oh, am I going too fast? Sorry. I'm ready to go. You want me to go back to the beginning? You good? and then Absorki, Homestead Lodge. And like I said, all of these projects are very deserving. It is an enormous, undertaking for us mentally, emotionally, to try to decide which projects to bring forward, and then even more so when we get to the allocation round, which ones to actually fund. So, I hope that everybody in the room understands how serious we do take this, and that we are, giving every consideration to all of your projects. And again, I thank you all for all of your hard work, and, thank you.
Thank you, Johnny. I want to just reiterate what everyone has said. This is an agonizing process. I wish we had the funds to fund all 15 of these projects, because I think they're all excellent. They're all needed, very much so. And it's just a sad day that we can't fund them all. I basically looked at a number of factors as well: geographic distribution, whether it's a rural or urban project, the need in the community, which of course is very important, construction costs, and then the frequency of awards in that particular community or area. The first project that is in my priority list is Nicole Court. I would like to say that's because I admire Jim Morton's tenacity, but it's more because I think there's a need in the community. It is a rural project. I think that the cost is reasonable for a small rural project. I know that Jim has worked hard over a 5-year period to get those costs down to Homestead Lodge in Absorki. Again, that's a very rural rehab project. There's Boulevard Apartment. Might be kind of that one. My father was living there when he died at 99 years old. But I think that the location of that project in downtown Bozeman is just so important. I think that it's a project I want to support. Next is Paxson Place in Butte. It's been a while since Butte had a senior project. I think the construction costs are very reasonable. Next is the Fire Tower Apartments. There's a couple of reasons there. First, it's a rehab project that will go market if we don't do something with it. Plus, it's taking 20 units that are to affordable status, which I think is an excellent idea. Next is Pioneer Meadows. It's been a long time since there's been a tax credit allocation there. There's a great need in the community, a lot of support from the community, so I think that's one I support. Next is Skyview. Again, construction costs are very important. They are one of the lowest in the projects before us. So I support that one. The last one is, and this kind of violates my geographical distribution rule, but I support Timber Ridge, although 2 of those buildings are in the Bitterroot Valley rather than Bozeman. So that would be my selections. Let's take about a 5-minute break, give staff a time to tabulate. Thank you for your patience. If you look at the screen up there, the first 6 projects listed in the gray or green, whatever color that might be, are invited to make an application. The next 4 projects are tied, so we're going to have to select 2 out of that 4 for our 8 projects that we will invite to make application. They're in no particular order. Those 4 are in no particular order. It just happens to be where they fell. So we'll have to use the motion, second, and vote on those.
We're just gonna make a nomination one at a time?
Yes, I think that's what we'll do. I don't know, unless you have a better way of doing it. If we want to go through and prioritize out of those 4, we could do that, Bob.
I'd like to hear about a half hour on each one of them again.
We could have each people prioritize 2 out of those 4. And
Mr. Chair, I'd support that. Have the board members each prioritize 2 out of the 4.
All right, then we can start with Eric again. Sure, it's Stevensville, Nicole Court, Laurel, Pullman Apartments. Missoula Skyview and Kalispell Creekside Commons. Would you use a mic, Eric?
I initially, in mine, selected the Missoula project and the Kalispell project, and I would like to stay with those votes for those 2 projects.
So that's Skyview and Creekside?
Yes.
I'm going to stick with my vote for Stevensville. I think there's a number of reasons for this. And one is I think it's so important to be able to serve the victims of domestic violence. This project got donated land. It already has a AHP grant that's been approved. A lot of reasons that this one really comes to the top for me. So that's where I'd go with this one.
Was that Nicole and?
I only said Nicole Court.
Okay, all right.
I'm taking one moment to talk about my second one. My second choice is going to be the Pullman Apartments in Laurel. Again, low end, the cost units for tax credits per unit. Yellowstone County being an underserved county, that would be my second choice.
Thank you, Sheila. Bob?
So I had all four of these in my first round. This is tough, but I'm going to go top and bottom. Creekside Commons, it was my number 2 overall vote getter, so I strongly support it. And for many of the same reasons that Sheila has expressed, and the creativity and the need in that particular part of the Bitterroot, I'm going to support Nicole Court.
Thank you. Amber?
I am going to support Nicole Court. It's been on my radar since I have been on the board, and I believe I've supported it every time, except this time it just made it a little further down my list. But I am in support of that particular project. And then my second would be Creekside Commons, which I originally voted for.
Bob, what was yours again? I'm sorry, your 2?
Thank you, Amber. Jeanette?
I'm going to vote for Nicole Court, and it just barely missed mine, and I have been a supporter for years, and I'm also going to go for Missoula Skyview.
Thank you. Johnny?
So I voted for 3 of the 4 originally, I'm going to go with, Nicole Court and Laurel. Laurel hasn't received an award since 2002, so.
Thank you, and the chair will go with, Nicole Court for some of the reasons stated, the domestic violence, the donated land, and the need in the community, rural, and with, Skyview, basically because there's tremendous need in Missoula. Thank you. Okay, we have, what are you saying?
So I'm Bruce. Nicole is the top vote getter, and then I have a tie between Skyview and Creekside. Is that what you said? I have Skyview, all three of them.
All three of them.
All three of them.
All right, so we have another tie. Nicole Court obviously has received enough votes here to move on. All right, we need to do, we have a tie between Skyview and Creekside Commons. So we're going to go back and do this one more time, just one this time, starting with Eric. Hold on a sec. I want to make sure we got this right, so.
Just have a second here, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, take your time. There's no rush on these. This is too important to rush.
This is really difficult, but I would vote for Missoula Skyview.
Thank you. Sheila?
This is really difficult, but I would vote for Missoula Skyview.
All right, Bob?
Creekside Commons, my number 2.
Amber?
Creekside Commons.
Jeanette?
Missoula Skyview.
Missoula Skyview.
And the chair selects Missoula Skyview.
So right now, we have Bozeman Timber Ridge, Absarke Homestead, Helena Fire Tower Apartments, Dillon Pioneer Meadows, Hardin Senior Housing, Butte, Paxton Place, Stevensville, Nicole Court, and Missoula Skyview are the slate of projects for the 8.
The way this has worked in the past, we have a slate of 8. We have an opportunity to make a discussion and for board members to change priorities if they would like. If not, if no one wants to change priority, we would entertain a motion to adopt this slate of applications to bring forward with or letters of intent to bring forward with full applications.
I move the motion.
I second.
Absolutely. Hold on. From the top, Bozeman Timber Ridge, Absarke Homestead, Helena Fire Tower, Dillon Pioneer Meadows, I can do that, but you're gonna challenge me here. Okay, we've got Hardin Senior, we've got Stevensville Nicole Court, we've got Absarke Homestead, we've got Butte Paxton Place, Helena Fire Tower, Dillon Pioneer Meadows, Missoula Skyview, and Bozeman Timber Ridge.
All right, so the motion is to adopt the slate as Bruce has just read. Of course, we can amend the motion by removing and adding letter of intent. So anybody that wants to do that may make a motion anytime. Do we have any discussion from the board regarding this slate? Do we have any comments from members of the public regarding the motion? Is there any further discussion from the board on the motion to adopt this slate? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you. We're going to move on to the finance program at this point.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, members of the public. I'm Ginger Fancook with the board, Montana Housing, and in your packet you have the accounting and finance dashboard. I was there was an additional $90,000 purchase in federal farm credit account. You know, if I may, want to say thank you all that brought the letters of intent. Know how difficult a process this is. You know that some of these projects have been here for instance, one, this is the fifth time it was before us. So be tenacious, hang in there. Don't be afraid to refile. We look forward to seeing you. Thank you for everything you do. Sorry, Ginger. No problem. They deserve that. Thank them very much. The investment diversification is just our indicator, how we handle the risk of investment, and the fact that we have a large amount in the money market and all of the rest is divided up fairly equally amongst other investments reduces that risk on our investments. The money market is a really low risk investment. It also gives us the opportunity
to withdraw funds for operations, and in the case of this coming month, we're going to be paying debt service out of that. As you can see, the weighted average yield on the February 28th had gone down just a bit, and unfortunately it did continue to go down, but very, very slightly in March. It went from 2.54, it went 2.54 in February to 2.39 in March. But in March of 2018, it was only 1.76. So we are doing a great deal better than we were last year. We have $84 million in money market at the end of March, and an additional $5 million was maturing this month so that we can do our June 1st bond call. And a question on the dashboard. I just wanted to let you know that I am redesigning the dashboard with a little more financial information to make it a little bit more helpful to what you are looking for. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ginger. Anybody have any questions or comments regarding the financial and accounting report? Or any public comments or questions regarding our financial report? Thank you, Ginger. Cheryl, we will have the operations report. Thank you.
Good morning, members of the board and members of the public. I am Cheryl Cohen, Operations Manager with Montana Housing. So in your packet, you'll have the 2019 calendar, which has been updated. Our next board meeting will be June 17th in Billings in conjunction with the Housing Conference. And for board training, we have listed to attend for the Housing Partnership Conference, Pat, Eric, Bob, Sheila, Johnny, and Amber. If that is incorrect or if I've missed anybody, please let myself or Paula know. We want to make sure that you guys are registered and have lodgings. For out-of-state board training opportunity, we have the NCSHA annual conference in Boston, and we've had Pat, Eric, and Amber confirmed as attending. Again, if there's any errors with that, please let us know. We're currently hiring for an accountant position, which was vacated with Brian transition to the multifamily compliance team. That position opened up on April 17th and is closing until filled, but I think Ginger's been looking at applications this morning. And to round it all off with some riveting information, we're working on a variety of contracting and procurement stuff. So we've got several annual contract renewals underway for our various legal counsels, Q-Tech Rock, Hendrickson Law Firm, Jackson Rideau, and Emphasis Software, which is our software provider. We also intend to begin working on several releases for information and releases for proposals to issue later this year. So those may include a competitive RFP for mortgage consulting, mortgage servicing consulting. We currently have a limited solicitation contract with BLS Consulting. We're also looking at an RFI, a release for information, a request for information for third-party quality control vendors, and this is for GSE, Fannie Mae, and Freddie Mac compliance. We've received demos from several vendors, and based on the feedback from the State Procurement Bureau, we've determined the next steps would be to issue an RFI to get more information and get the full range of services and kind of be able to do some internal budgeting before going full ahead with an RFP. And finally, we're looking at releasing a competitive RFP for document imaging and loan file cataloging. So this is to gain some workflow efficiency in loan file processing. And just to give you a little update about our GSE seller servicer approval work plan, we submitted formal letters to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in late April, and they provided comprehensive updates on our progress toward remedying deficiencies during their respective operational reviews. In addition, those letters outline several asks to each of the GSEs, including things like regular pre-scheduled calls and clarification on various GSE technology tools. And we asked to receive some specific contract language with respect to their various loan requirements for FHAs. We had an in-person meeting with Gina from Freddie Mac on April 25th and intend to begin having monthly one-on-one operation calls with them starting in July. And we had a conference call with Jessica Wright and Daniel Lera from Fannie Mae on May 3rd, and we have a follow-up call with them on Wednesday. And finally, in collaboration with Acorn Mortgage Consulting, the executive leadership staff hosted a larger staff training that included all of our accounting, home ownership, servicing, and admin teams. We really wanted to bring in the entire staff and provide them an overview about Fannie Mae, where we are at on our work plan to date, and give an opportunity for kind of questions and answers. So this is part of our change management strategy to make sure that everyone's kind of on board and that we're really transparent in communicating kind of where we see that we're going and why are we doing this, and how we can all work together to move forward on this plan. So that was a really well-attended meeting, and I think it resulted in some great conversation, and we were glad to have it. So with that, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Cheryl. Is there any questions of Cheryl or comments regarding the operations report?
Cheryl, I really appreciate the work that's being done on the Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. So we have some meetings. What's the progress on the approval?
Sure. So I think the strategies of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are a little bit different. Fannie Mae is a little more structured in how they go about their approval process, and so they kind of outline some deficiencies, and we've made some real headway on some of those around, pre-funding quality control, our oversight and approval process for participating lenders. We still have some work to do in those areas, and some other work to do in categories like appraisals and how we review and ensure the quality of appraisals for the loans we purchase. And so where we're at with them, and Fannie's in a stage right now too where they're changing their approval process, and they intend to roll out a new process starting in June. So we're caught in a little bit of a pickle and are waiting for them to give us a little bit more feedback as far as whether or not we'll continue under their old model or whether we'll pick up under this kind of new process. And so we're hoping to get a bit more information from them on our call on Wednesday. For Freddie Mac, it's a little less prescriptive. They kind of identified some things, and we're making some headway on those related to internal policies and procedures around fraud prevention, things of that nature. But I think we can move ahead with both, and we're trying to do those deficiencies wherever they're in tandem to move ahead. So I don't think we have a set timeline as far as when we think we'll be able to get there, but I think we're just continuing to work in and balance our existing business needs and making sure we're running things efficiently now and adding on this new work plan and balancing those priorities.
Thank you. Sheila?
I don't know if this is for Cheryl or Bruce, but we had a kind of a preliminary little strategic planning session, and just wondered what the board can be doing to assist that process along.
That's a great question. So I think where we left off is I have some work to do on my end, and I think I was going to set up some times to maybe send out a schedule of emails, maybe on a weekly or biweekly basis to board members to kind of get some feedback from you about how you'd like to proceed with things like a more rigorous outreach plan. Eric provided me with some information about a lender scorecard, so we're really looking at developing a scorecard or a success matrix. What does success look like, and how do we proceed on that? So I've had kind of shifted priorities a little bit to work on some of the Fannie Mae stuff for the meetings in April and our contract renewals, but I intend to kind of bring you guys in and make sure we have some good progress between now and our meeting in September, so we have a clear path forward on strategic planning.
Any other questions of Cheryl? Any comments regarding the operations plan from the board? Any comments or questions from members of the public regarding our operations program? Okay, Bruce, we can move to Executive Director's report.
I think Cheryl covered everything pretty well. So I don't know, administratively, do we need any travel things, any? Yeah, we'll need to talk about that. Maybe.
You can use the mic, but.
Yeah, we've got the one conference next year that a lot of board members are interested in is the legislative conference, and it's in Washington, D.C., the beginning of March. Jeanette's gone this last year and represented us well, as Bob was called to the Capitol and I was called to the hospital that week. So, think about that one. We don't really need that. Could we let them think about that one and then gather that?
Normally we take 2 board members.
Yeah, and then I usually try to go to. So think about that one. And other than that, it's been a great couple days. So thanks to board members for all of the time you guys have put in. It's amazing. I'm glad I don't have a vote in this process.
Absolutely. Thank you, each and every board member, for all your hard work and empathy towards our applicants. We really appreciate it. Okay, are there any?
I just had one little thing.
Yes.
Last time at the latest, you wanted, wait list numbers. I did include those. If you wanted to just look those over, see if you want anything else from that aspect of it. But I was planning on doing that on a quarterly basis, so.
Any member of the board have anything they want to bring up, maybe for a future meeting or whatever? Hearing none, we can adjourn the meeting. We have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? Second. All those in favor of adjournment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.